Welcome back to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you come to these videos as a gentle way to unwind before drifting off to sleep. So, before you close your eyes tonight, could I ask you for one small favor? Just leave me a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or maybe share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Little actions like that help YouTube recognize the content and spread it to more people who might enjoy it. My current goal is to reach around 300 likes within the first 24 hours. Now then, let's step into tonight's chilling stories together. I'm Jackson. My family and I moved into a new house in Asheville, North Carolina, when I was 13. We hadn't had a chance to get to know our neighbors or our new neighborhood yet. That's probably why my parents had so much trouble finding me, even though I was held just a few dozen yards from our house. That evening, I was watching TV on the living room couch and fell asleep. I vaguely remember someone lifting me up, and I just assumed it was my parents carrying me to bed. At the time, I was a skinny, small kid, a little over 5 feet tall, and weighing less than 90 pounds. When I woke up, I was standing outside my house with a strange teenager. He was much taller and bigger than me, definitely a high school student. I was still half asleep, so I thought he was a friend of someone in my family. He was really friendly and introduced himself as Tyler. Tyler told me he was having a party at his place and listed off a few kids from my new school that I knew, saying they'd be there. I didn't suspect a thing and followed him to a house more than half a mile away. He said he lived there with his brother. The house was quiet. There was no sign of Tyler's brother or a party, but I still didn't feel like anything was wrong. I guess I wasn't fully awake yet. Tyler led me inside and said while we waited for his friends to show up, we could go upstairs and look at his model car collection. I trusted him and followed him. The upstairs room was dark, with just a dirty bed and a strong, musty smell. As soon as I stepped into the room, Tyler's whole attitude changed. The friendly smile was gone, and his eyes became cold and terrifying. Before I could even react, Tyler grabbed me and threw me onto the bed. Being so small, I had no chance against a guy who was much bigger and stronger. Tyler jumped on top of me, using his weight to pin me down. He grabbed my right ankle and twisted it. There was a loud pop as my ankle broke. The pain was unbearable. I screamed and struggled, but it was no use. My screams were met with Tyler's delighted laughter. I took advantage of a moment when he let go, rolled off the bed and limped down the stairs. My right ankle was definitely broken, but I had to try. I was like a wounded deer running from a strong lion. Tyler caught me at the bottom of the stairs. He started kicking and punching me over and over until I had no strength left to fight back. Every hit felt like my entire body was about to shatter. When he threw me onto the couch downstairs, I was crying and begging him to let me go. I promised I wouldn't tell anyone what happened, but he refused. When I asked him why he was doing this, the maniac slowly said he loved the sound and feeling of bones breaking. He said he had done this before and described how much he enjoyed it. That's when the hours of living in a personal hell began. I was held captive in Tyler's house. The most horrible thing wasn't just the beatings, but the moments when Tyler would act nice. After each session of torture, he would completely change. He would watch movies with me and talk to me like nothing had happened. Tyler even wrapped white socks around my feet as if he were bandaging my wounds, put braces on my legs, and helped me walk. I couldn't understand his mindset. At times, I almost believed the nightmare was over, that Tyler had felt remorse and was going to let me go. But then the cycle would start all over again. For 2 days, I was nothing more than a toy for Tyler to take out his frustrations on. If his car wouldn't start, he'd twist my foot. If he was in a bad mood, he'd break my kneecaps. Every time I tried to fight back or run, the torture got even worse. I was getting weaker and weaker because of my severe injuries and the fact that I wasn't given any food or water. But my will to survive pushed me to find a way to escape. The first time, I tried to crawl downstairs while Tyler was out. With my broken legs, I could only crawl using my hands and elbows. When I made it to the kitchen, I heard keys jingle. Tyler was back. He found me collapsed on the kitchen floor and yelled like an animal that had been cornered. The second and third attempts to escape failed in the same way. Each time I was caught, I had to endure even more intense pain. After those failed escape attempts, he locked me in an upstairs closet. The space was tiny and pitch black. There was no food or water. I sat huddled in the corner, my body in constant pain, my mind becoming fuzzy from exhaustion. I knew I was getting weaker, and if I didn't get out soon, I'd probably die. Tyler, meanwhile, was living like a normal teenager. No one suspected he was holding a child captive in his house. On the evening of the second day, Tyler went out again. I knew this might be my last chance. In the darkness of the closet, I felt around for anything that could help me get out. My hand touched something hard, a wooden guitar. I managed to lift it and used it as a tool to smash the closet door. After a few tries, I pushed hard, and the door swung open. I rolled out of the closet and went for the stairs. Since I couldn't use my legs, I could only crawl and roll. I remember passing out from the pain a few times, but my will to live was stronger. I had to get out before Tyler came back. I finally made it to the wall phone in the kitchen. My hands shaking, I shook the cord until the receiver fell to the floor. In a weak voice, I called 911 and gave them my location. The police arrived before Tyler did, and I was in critical condition. They rushed me to the emergency room right away. Let me tell you about the terrible state I was in. I heard the details from the doctor who treated me. They probably thought I was unconscious, but I remember everything clearly. My feet were twisted, my toes were crooked, and my skin was pale. My arm was dislocated, my thigh was broken, and my ribs were bruised and fractured. Most importantly, I had serious internal bleeding, which could have killed me at any moment. The doctors saved my life, but they said it would take years and dozens of surgeries to repair my legs and get back my ability to walk. Later, my parents told me what happened. While I was being treated, the police began an urgent investigation. They searched the entire house where I was being held, collecting evidence and looking for clues about the perpetrator. What was unbelievable was that Tyler was my family's neighbor. I was very close while my family was doing all the searching. The police also interviewed witnesses in the area, trying to identify Tyler. The investigation lasted all night, with the participation of many different units. Tyler's real name was Gary. He was arrested at a party with his girlfriend. He acted totally normal, as if he had never done anything wrong. I later found out that I wasn't his only victim. Tyler had previously killed a 14-year-old boy in the same city, using the exact same methods he used on me. The police found a notebook in Tyler's room that listed the names of 18 other boys he planned to attack next. The list included details about the time, location, and methods he wanted to use to handle each victim. Gary was sentenced to 100 years in prison for the assault on me, and life in prison plus 50 years for murder. It's not an exaggeration to say that my childhood was destroyed by what happened. The physical pain and emotional trauma made it impossible for me to learn and grow normally like other kids. Luckily, I had my family by my side, and I never gave up. Now I'm 29. I've learned that survival isn't just about luck. It's about a will to never give up. Even in the most terrible situations, we can find the strength to fight for our lives. Last October, my husband Jason and I moved to Sacramento, California. My name is Lena, and we were excited to start a new life. Our neighbors to the right, Thorne and Mara, seemed to be around our age. We hoped we'd become good friends. The first week was peaceful. I was busy setting up the house and planting some flowers on the porch. I loved the sense of calm after years of living in a tiny apartment in Los Angeles. It was the best time before everything went downhill. Strange things began to happen about a month after we moved in. One night, I woke up to the sound of a woman sobbing. I nudged Jace, but he was fast asleep, so I just lay there and listened. The crying went on for a while, and then suddenly stopped. I didn't think much of it at the time and went back to sleep. The next morning, I saw Mara at the grocery store. She was pushing her cart carefully, constantly looking over her shoulder. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying, and her hands were trembling as she reached for a carton of milk. When I said hello, she jumped and looked at me with a panicked expression. It took her a few seconds to recognize me. She tried to smile, but it couldn't hide the fear on her thin face. When I got home, I told Jace about the strange encounter. From that point on, we started paying closer attention to the noises from next door. Over the next few days, the crying happened more often. Sometimes it was a piercing scream at 2 a.m. that would wake me up. Other times, it was a long, constant moaning that kept me from sleeping. Jace tried to comfort me, saying they might just be having marriage problems, but my gut told me it was something else. One weekend afternoon, I decided to take a box of homemade muffins over to their house. Mara opened the door just a crack. I immediately noticed bruises on her arms. When I asked if she needed any help, she just mumbled, "Thank you," and said she was fine before closing the door. That night, the noise from next door was worse than ever. There was screaming, things breaking, and a terrible argument that made me shake with fear. I begged Jace to call the police, but he said they probably needed some time to work things out and we shouldn't get involved. But I really wanted to help Mara. The next week, I went to visit Mara again. This time, she invited me in for tea. She began telling me about her terrible nightmares. She described being trapped in a dark place with dirt falling into her eyes and mouth. She said she tried to scratch the dirt away to escape, but the more she scratched, the more dirt fell. While she was talking, I took a closer look at the bruises on her arms. I was shocked to see they didn't look like bruises from being hit. They looked like deep scratches she had made herself. That day, Jace came home and told me in a serious tone not to go to Mara's house again. "I don't know what's happening over there, but I have a bad feeling about it, and I don't want you to get mixed up in it." I listened to him, but my heart ached for Mara. She needed a friend, someone to understand what she was going through. But that Friday night, everything changed, and I finally understood why Jace was so worried. Around 1 a.m., I woke up to a sound from next door, but this time it was different. It was like someone was laughing and crying at the same time. Jace woke up too. He grabbed my hand as the moaning grew louder and more distorted. Suddenly, a piercing scream rang out. I recognized it as Mara's voice. Jace threw on a shirt and ran outside. I followed him. Jace knocked on the door hard, and Thorn opened it. He looked exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in days. He apologized for the noise and said Mara wasn't feeling well. Just then, we heard a moan from the living room, followed by a painful cry in Mara's voice. "Leave me alone!" "I can't take it anymore." Thorn's face went pale. He tried to close the door, but Jace had already peeked inside. I also caught a glimpse of a sight I will never forget. Mara was on the floor on her knees. Her hands and feet were in chains, her clothes were torn, and her hair was a mess. But the worst part was her fingers. They were bent backward, and her nails were caked in black blood. Mara was clawing at the wooden floor, making a horrible scratching sound. When she saw us, she looked up with all white eyes and a chilling smile. Thorn rushed to her, begged her to stop, and then turned back to us, begging us to go home. Jace pulled me back to our house. I was shaking and couldn't say a word. We lay in bed, too afraid to sleep. A few days later, Thorn came to our door. He looked completely different. He was thin, and his eyes were hollow. We invited him in, and he nervously told us the whole story. They had been married for a year. Everything was great at first, but then Mara started having terrible nightmares. She began hurting herself. Some nights she would scream and speak in a language Thorn had never heard before. The sounds didn't even seem human. Thorn had taken Mara to the doctor, but they only diagnosed her with a mental disorder. Thorn even invited a spiritual medium over, but the man ran out of the house screaming that Mara was possessed and then drove away. Thorn had no choice but to chain Mara when she started hurting herself and him. On the night we saw her, Mara suddenly became clear-headed. and begged Thorn to save her. She confessed to him that when she was 21, she had an unwanted pregnancy with a man she couldn't even remember. Fearing being judged and ruining her career, she decided to get an abortion. Mara said that ever since then, she always felt like something was watching her. It started with strange dreams, but after she married Thorn and they moved into their new house, things got worse. She felt the presence of a child, a small, hateful spirit. It would whisper hurtful things to her, keeping her from sleeping or living a normal life. Thorn now understood why Mara was always waking up crying. She was hurting herself to punish herself. Thorn and Mara had a funeral mass performed by a priest. Mara confessed her sins to God and prayed for the spirit of the baby to be at peace. A few days later, Thorn and Mara came to see us. They looked much better. They told us they were moving to another city and apologized for all the trouble they had caused. They didn't say much about Mara's condition, just that they needed a fresh start somewhere else. I felt so much sympathy for Mara, a woman who had to live with the consequences of a past decision for so many years. But what I remember most is the love Thorn had for his wife. He never left her, even in the most difficult times. He was even willing to do things he never believed in before to save her. A young family now lives in the house next door. I often think about Thorn and Mara and wonder if they ever found peace in their new home. My name is Katie. I'm 30 years old and still enjoying the single life. I moved into an affordable apartment in Columbus, Ohio, over a year ago. I'd say I had the best neighbor anyone could ever ask for. Her name was Lisa. She worked the night shift and was rarely loud. Her small dog was also an initial concern, but I quickly found out it was just as quiet as its owner. Everything was peaceful. After a year there, I was so happy that I signed another lease, thinking everything would continue to be great. It was also around this time that Lisa told me she had found a boyfriend and was very happy. After that, I saw her less often. A month after I signed the second lease, things started to change significantly. There were loud arguments coming from Lisa's apartment. Her dog reacted to the noise just like I did. The dog would bark nonstop while she and her boyfriend yelled at each other. I tried to ignore the noise for a few weeks, but I couldn't take it anymore. I started to bang on the wall as a subtle hint. They noticed the first time, but all the times after that were ignored. The noise continued for 3 months. After a few police visits, Lisa showed up at my door to apologize. She said everything was great at first, just like she told me. But after he moved in, his behavior changed. It seemed like all they did was argue. He hit Lisa during an argument. He apologized and swore it would never happen again. And she was foolish enough to forgive him. But the situation continued. Finally, Lisa kicked him out. She hoped he would move on. But it wasn't long before he showed up at her door again, begging to be let back in. The police were called, and Lisa was able to get a restraining order. Everything went back to normal. I got my peaceful life back. I assumed she did too. Since we had opposite schedules, it was normal for us not to see or hear each other for a few weeks. Then one day, something terrible happened. When I got home from work, my parking spot was blocked by several police cars and an ambulance. I was surprised, but I didn't think it was my problem. I found another parking spot and went to my apartment. When I got closer to my apartment, I noticed that Lisa's apartment door was wide open. Police were coming in and out. I guessed that her ex-boyfriend showed up again. As I got closer, another police officer stopped me and told me that the area was blocked off. I told him I lived in the building and asked what had happened. They couldn't tell me. The officer said something on his radio. A minute later, a man in a suit came out of the apartment and pulled me aside. He had a few questions. He asked if I had seen anything and things like that. I was getting more and more worried. I begged him to tell me what was going on. He stopped and said in a very serious voice that my neighbor had died in her apartment. I was in complete shock. Before he could ask, I blurted out the name of Lisa's ex-boyfriend. I could tell that he was the main suspect. He gave me his business card and let me go. I turned to walk away, but I stopped because I remembered something else. I quickly blurted out, "What about her dog?" The detective hesitated. A sad look came over his face. "The attacker seems to have killed it too." "I'm sorry," I mumbled a curse as I walked away. I even cried as I remembered the happy moments I had with Lisa and her dog. The next morning, I read the newspaper to find information about Lisa's case. The news report explained that Lisa was a week late on rent. The landlord called, but Lisa didn't answer. After 2 days with no response, the landlord went to the apartment in person. The landlord knocked on the door, but no one answered. So the landlord let themselves in and saw the horrifying scene. The detective was quoted saying they still hadn't found Lisa's ex-boyfriend. Not much information has been released since then. The ex-boyfriend's name still hasn't been found, and there were no other suspects at the time. I tried to find more news about the case. I even checked international forums and news sites many times, but there was no new information. Every time I think about Lisa, I always wonder if I could have done more for her. It's been almost a year now. I've already moved to another apartment. But for the rest of my time there, everything went back to normal. 2 months before my lease was up, a new tenant moved into Lisa's apartment. It was a young couple with a 5-year-old boy. The noise from them was nonstop, but it was the sounds of happiness. The place where I live now is mainly older couples, and there is almost no noise. Even though everything is great now, I don't think I'll ever have a neighbor as good as Lisa again. Every time I hear a noise on the ceiling or loud talking through the walls, I think of her.
Doll, a horrifying work of art made from human corpses. A man with a job crafting handmade dolls, and his craftsmanship was very famous. The dolls had large, round eyes, long, curled lashes, red lips, and hair meticulously sewn strand by strand. He sold many products and received countless orders. However, the man lived a simple life with his 7-year-old son. A wealthy man came to order a doll from the craftsman, requesting one the size of an adult. This wasn't the first time the doll maker had made a large-sized doll. But realizing that the wealthy man intended to use the doll for something malicious, he refused. Unable to accept that his request wasn't fulfilled, the wealthy man repeatedly sent his men to harass the doll maker's life. He demanded to burn all the precious works of the doll maker. The unfortunate fire caused the entire house to be engulfed in flames, and the wealthy man became even more excited and joyful. The 7-year-old son of the craftsman was still too young to witness such cruelty. The boy knelt crying next to his father's charred body, his innocent eyes filled with panic and despair. Surprised that the doll maker had a son, the henchmen didn't know what to do, so they took the boy to give him to the wealthy man. That wicked, perverse man was very pleased and decided to use the boy instead of the doll that had not been successfully ordered. The poor boy lived 2 lives, that of a sex doll and a free slave. The wealthy man called him a name that couldn't be more ugly and painful. Pain. Living in a dark hell for nearly 10 years, which is the very stage of personality development for a person, Pain gradually developed a sense of hatred. During one occasion, when the wealthy man was playing with Pain, the boy decisively plunged the pen he had in hand straight into the wealthy man's neck. Thick, warm, dark red liquid gushed out continuously, and the wealthy man died after losing 80% of his blood. Pain was freed from the demon, but became a different version of a demon. Pain wandered the street. He wanted to continue his father's ill-fated work. Pain's debut work became famous throughout the state for its haunting authenticity. The place where Payne created his work was a quiet corner of the street. The doll he created was female, with a twisted appearance made from the bodies of two beautiful women. The upper body and head were taken from a 25-year-old girl named Natalie, while the lower legs were from 19-year-old Mia, meticulously stitched together. Natalie's original hair was quite short and brown, so Payne stitched small strands of Mia's long blonde hair into the bloodied scalp. The most beautiful features of the two girls were skillfully combined to create a work of crime from suffering. At the time he created that debut work, Payne was 17 years old and had not yet been discovered. He became increasingly fascinated by the reactions of people to his work. Instead of praise, Payne preferred the sounds of screaming, weeping, and begging. Payne gradually became bolder in creating his works right in the park, at the train station, and so on. People would discover the dolls with the layer of red paint that had not been wiped off. Let me make you more beautiful. This is the message Payne left on each of his works. All of them had large, wide-open eyes, stretched to the maximum with stitches. Their lips were either bright red or smiling widely. Payne was arrested while creating a work under the bridge at midnight, just a few days before he turned 18. Payne was punished as an adult due to the severity of his crimes. On the day of the trial, the relatives of the victims wept for their children, while the judge cried for Payne's unfortunate life. At the end of the trial, the judge expressed his wish and hope that there would be no more trials like that in his career. I hope that suffering will stay away from innocent souls so that all children can live happily and develop in the best way possible, the judge said, holding back his emotions. No tears, no emotions. Payne's soul was numb, just like the doll. In the prison cell, Payne asked his cellmate in a voice as cold as ice, "Let me make you more perfect."
I've always loved the autumn days in Maine, when the air turns crisp, the leaves turn brilliant yellow, and the scent of my grandmother's apple pie fills the small kitchen. That week, my parents were on a business trip, so I was sent to stay with my grandmother. Her wooden house was nestled in the woods, cozy but full of mysterious corners. Grandma, with her neat gray hair tied up and kind eyes, was strict but full of love. She had certain rules, and one of them was to never go near the abandoned house a few hundred meters away. "That house is unsafe," she would say, but I heard it more like an invitation to explore. That afternoon, while Grandma was busy baking, I sneaked outside. The low fence was the only thing separating me from the secret on the other side. I climbed over it and followed the trail that led into the woods, the yellow leaves crunching under each step. The abandoned house appeared before me. The roof collapsed in one corner, the windows shattered, and a crooked wooden sign on the grass with the faded words, "No entry from years past." I tiptoed up the steps, the wooden door creaking when I pushed it open. Inside, everything was covered in dust and cobwebs. Faint light from gaps in the walls illuminated the decaying furniture. I stepped cautiously, the wooden floor creaking beneath me. A chill ran down my spine as I heard small footsteps echoing from somewhere. I stopped and listened. The noise ceased, leaving only the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. A trail of muddy footprints on the floor led to the basement door, slightly ajar. I couldn't resist my curiosity. I pushed the door open and saw a wooden staircase leading down into the darkness. Taking the small flashlight I always carried in my pocket, I descended step by step. The smell of mold was overpowering, mixed with the nauseating stench of decay. Under the beam of the flashlight, I saw old wooden boxes piled with dust. The cold, silent space seemed to swallow every sound. The basement door slammed shut behind me, the dry thud echoing, freezing my whole body. My heart raced, its thumping reverberating in the tight, cold space. I stood frozen for a few seconds before rushing up the stairs, my trembling hand gripping the rotting handrail, the rough wood scraping against my skin. "Open the door!" I shouted, my voice bouncing back in the pitch blackness. I pounded on the door, each strike sounding hollow, almost mocking me. Fear began to spread. I clawed at the door, my nails breaking slightly from the force. "Please, please," I choked out, but only the echo of my own voice responded. When I could no longer muster the strength to pound, I slowly sank down onto the stairs. I curled up, hugging my chest. Cold sweat trickled down my face, mixing with the dust on my forehead and cheeks, but I didn't bother to wipe it away. My breaths grew short and hurried, as though the air in the basement was slowly being drained. Below, the flashlight flickered, and I heard rustling. A swarm of rats appeared from a corner of the room, their eyes glowing in the light, creeping toward me. I scrambled to find a safe corner, climbing onto an old wooden table to avoid the rats. The cold wood of the table felt like ice against me, and I sat there, curled up, trying to hold back my sobs. In that cold, dark silence, it felt like time had stopped. I thought of my grandmother, of the warm kitchen and the scent of apple pie. I wished I had never stepped into that abandoned house, had never ignored my grandmother's warning. But now, everything was just fear and enveloping darkness. The next morning, I heard a call from above. "Billy, where are you?" Her voice made me burst into tears. Grandma opened the basement door, light from above spilling down. When she pulled me up, I saw her shaking. Her wrinkled hands wiped the dirt off my face, not saying a word of reproach. But her gaze was enough for me to understand that I had made a mistake. Before leaving, I glanced at the basement one last time. Through the broken window, I caught a glimpse of a figure passing by. I never told her about it, never asked about the shadow or mentioned that terrible night again. But every time I think back, the cold feeling in the basement still haunts me. I realize that sometimes curiosity can lead to consequences we never expect.
The warm yellow lights light up the fancy restaurant, giving it a cozy, romantic vibe. The sweet piano music coming from the corner mixes with the laughter of couples enjoying Valentine's Day. Vincent and Lena are having dinner together at a table by the window. Vincent, in his sharp black suit and confident smile, gives off the vibe of a successful guy. Lena, rocking a tight red dress that shows off her curves, gazes lovingly at the guy across from her. Everything about Vincent makes Lena happy. His style, his chill vibe, and how he makes her feel special. They've known each other for a few months, and this dinner is their way of celebrating their growing relationship. Everything's perfect, from the food to the vibe. It all feels like it's set up just for Lena to live out her romantic dream. The meal goes great, and Vincent waves the waiter over to their table. The waiter is a skinny guy in a tidy uniform, but he has a pale face and nervous eyes. He gives Lena a curious look while listening to Vincent's order. Lena gives the waiter a disapproving look, her face showing a bit of discomfort. Lena thinks the waiter's presence is kind of weird. She gets up, grabs Vincent's hand, and signals that they should bounce from the restaurant right away. Vincent, though a bit confused, still follows her. As Lena walks through the door, she glances back and sees the waiter still standing there, his eyes looking like he wants to say something. When Lena gets to the parking lot, she sighs, still feeling frustrated. But just as she's about to get in her car, a thought suddenly pops up. The watch! She hurries back to the restaurant, telling Vincent she left the watch he gave her in the bathroom. Vincent waits outside, his eyes following Lena as she disappears through the big glass doors of the restaurant. About 20 minutes later, Lena comes back, smiling big as she holds her watch in her hand. Vincent greets her with a soft squeeze of her hand, and they head out. It's still early, and they've eaten enough, so Vincent suggests going to his place for a few more glasses of wine. Lena quickly agrees. Vincent's house, like everything he owns, oozes luxury and class. Big glass walls surround the living room, giving a view of the starry night sky, and the fireplace light makes the space feel warmer. Vincent pours 2 glasses of red wine and sits down next to Lena on the big sofa. They talk, laugh, and share little stories about life. Lena leans her head on Vincent's shoulder, feeling his warmth and the scent of wine in the air. Time moves slowly, and everything feels perfect, like the kind of evening every couple dreams of. But the evening doesn't last forever. When the clock hits midnight, Lena feels her eyes getting heavy. Vincent smiles, gently helps her lie down on the sofa, and pulls the soft blanket over her. She falls asleep, feeling warm and safe. Lena wakes up when it's already dawn. The room is now quiet, with just the faint light from the dim fireplace left. Lena calmly packs up her things, fixes her hair in front of the big mirror in the living room, and leaves quietly. In her apartment, Lena sits on the sofa, sipping a cup of hot coffee. The watch on her wrist sparkles. She turns on the TV and switches to the morning news. The first image that shows up makes Lena stop. On the screen is a shot of the restaurant where they had dinner last night. The news talks about the mysterious death of a waiter. The guy was found collapsed in the restaurant's bathroom, with the cause still unknown. Lena sips her hot tea, remembering the waiter's confused look when he was caught eavesdropping on her phone call in a hidden corner of the restaurant. The corners of Lena's lips curl into a smile. Soon after, the news switches to something else. Young billionaire Vincent Davis has been found dead at his home. Authorities say there are no signs of foul play, but the cause of death remains undetermined. Early reports from the scene suggest that a stroke is a likely cause. Lena stares at the screen for a long time. Her smile gets bigger, and her eyes sparkle with satisfaction. She puts down her teacup and leans back in her chair, letting the sound of the TV echo in the quiet room. Lena takes out her phone and makes a call. "I've done what you asked. That big fortune is yours now. Just transfer the rest of the money to my account, and we'll cut off all contact." The romance between Vincent and Lena is now just a buried secret. For Lena, that Valentine's Day is really just a perfect memory with a nice reward.
The crying doll on the double-decker bus. I'm Francis, 28. I have a girlfriend who's 26. We live and work in Houston, and we've been together for almost 3 years. After wrapping up a big project that took 6 months, I planned a 7-day vacation for my girlfriend. I picked Chicago as our destination, since it's where my girlfriend was born and grew up until she was 10. She remembers a lot from when she was little, and shares those memories with me often. Chicago is a beautiful city, and definitely worth experiencing. I booked a flight and a hotel, and we meant to spend a really meaningful and happy week together. No words can depict her happiness and excitement. She told me about how Chicago has changed compared to 16 years ago. It was really meaningful and interesting for her to recall her childhood while experiencing the city again. On the evening of our 4th day in Chicago, we decided to take a double-decker bus tour to see the city after dinner. Chicago at night was absolutely amazing, and the weather that day was perfect. The bus was pretty empty that day. We sat in the back row, a girl was in the middle row, and another couple sat up in front. I liked how sparse it was. It made everything feel more private. I gave my girlfriend a necklace with the first letters of our names engraved on it. We shared a quick kiss and laughed together. I jumped when something really hot touched my foot. I looked down and saw a baby bottle. I figured it must have belonged to the girl sitting in the middle row. I walked up to the girl and said, "You dropped the baby's bottle." The girl was startled, turned around, took the bottle from me, and said thank you. I really love kids and have told my girlfriend many times that I'm ready to become a father. I sat in the empty chair opposite the mother and daughter to watch the baby for a bit. I asked, "Is that a boy?" because I noticed the blue clothes and the thin blanket. The girl smiled and replied, "Yes, his name is Jonathan." But when she pulled down the thin blanket, I was startled to see that it was a doll. My smile instantly turned awkward. "Do you think my son is cute?" I nodded and quickly went back to my seat. My girlfriend asked me curiously what happened. "I think that girl lost her mind." I told her what I saw, and at first, she thought maybe I just saw it wrong because it was dark. I wasn't sure either, since I was confused and didn't get a good look at the baby in the girl's arms. We decided to just ignore it and continued enjoying the city. About 10 minutes later, while we were sitting in the front row chatting and laughing with the couple, suddenly, the girl's sad singing voice echoed through the bus, and it was heartbreaking and painful to hear. The couple turned to look at the girl and then glanced at us with uncomfortable expressions. We were just as confused, and I couldn't help but get goosebumps. The wind, which had been really cool, made me shiver. Remembering the movies we had watched, the mother who had lost her child and was so sad and had lost her memory, thinking that the dolls were her children, it was really similar to what was happening now. My girlfriend walked over to the girl. I couldn't hear clearly what they were saying. I just saw my girlfriend's smile turn into confusion before she quickly returned to her seat. My girlfriend told me she noticed the girl's shirt and the towel around the baby seemed quite wet. The girl must have just given birth recently, and the wet shirt and towel were from milk flowing out. But she was holding a doll, not a real child. We looked at each other with concern. My girlfriend suggested we get off at the next stop and end the bus tour there. I agreed. From that moment on, we all kept an eye on the girl, and so did the other couple. Suddenly, the girl stood up, walked to the center of the seats, and shouted, "This is my son Jonathan. I just bought him this afternoon." As she spoke, she smiled, but it looked more like the smile of a lunatic than the happy smile of a mother. The next moment, the girl was crying again, hugging the doll tightly to her chest. "My previous son couldn't be used anymore. He kept crying a lot, all day long." The other 4 people on the bus were all frozen, and we didn't know how to react. Suddenly, a baby's cry really rang out. The girl immediately stopped crying and went into a total panic. Could it be that the cry was coming from the doll? The girl hurriedly searched for something. The baby's cry seemed to trigger her nerves. After a while of searching, she threw the doll aside and rushed to the bag at the seat where she had been sitting. From the large bag, the girl pulled out a child. This had to be the real Jonathan she just mentioned. The girl hugged the little child to her chest and tried to comfort him. The child kept crying, and the young mother, feeling helpless, cried along with him. I quickly pulled out my phone and called the police, reporting the situation and what was happening. The bus had just stopped at the next stop, and the couple hurriedly ran away. I ran to inform the driver, while my girlfriend stayed behind to comfort the mother and the child. On the lower floor of the bus, I quickly summarized everything to the driver. Suddenly, my girlfriend screamed loudly in a panic. A small blue object, making the sound of a baby crying, passed through the window of the bus on the first floor. I was stunned for a few seconds. The crying stopped, and then there was another loud scream. A small dismembered body was lying on the road. The driver and I panicked and rushed up to the second floor of the bus. I ran to where my girlfriend was kneeling and crying on the ground. She hugged me tightly, her body shaking and her hands cold. The other girl was holding a doll and singing a lullaby happily. The police arrived, sealed off the scene, immediately helped take the girl to a treatment facility, and asked everyone involved to go to the station to cooperate with the investigation. It took a while for my girlfriend to calm down and describe the horrific and heartbreaking scene. That girl was Louisa, a mother who had just had a baby boy a little over 3 months ago. Louisa was suffering from postpartum depression and psychosis because she wasn't getting the care she needed. Her husband had been having an affair since Louisa was 6 months pregnant. Louisa had been mentally tortured by her husband and his lover for a long time. How much endurance, despair, and fatigue would it take for someone to act like that towards their own child? Louisa's husband and his lover need to be held accountable and face appropriate punishment. Louisa is getting treatment, but I can't imagine how painful it will be for her when she finally realizes what happened. I'm sure Louisa isn't the only one going through this. There are a lot of young mothers out there under pressure, having to care for their children all on their own. Children and women always need to be cared for, supported, and protected in all circumstances. I'm Ryan, 17 years old, living with my parents in Arizona. I have a passion for the gym. My father is my inspiration. My dad designed a fairly large room full of exercise equipment at home. Dad has an admirably toned body at the age of 58. My mother is quite young, 13 years younger than my father. Mom doesn't like to exercise but prefers skin caring and follows a strict diet. I'm very proud to have parents with outstanding and youthful appearances. But I have nothing in common with them, except for my mother's blue eyes. I don't care too much about this. After all, I'm quite handsome according to everyone's compliments. In my father's practice room, there's a wooden shelf containing many medals of large and small awards from gymmers. The top position in the middle of the wooden shelf is a picture of my mother when she was young. But in that photo, my mother has brown eyes. In my mother's room, there's also a very strange picture of a woman. I have never met her before. She's very beautiful, short brown hair and blue eyes like me and my mother. I witnessed several times my mother clutching that photo and crying, looking at her in so much pain and torment. I asked my mother about the photo of that woman. She just smiled at me and did not answer. After many times like that, I didn't ask about that woman anymore. My parents rarely show affection to each other. They respect each other's private space. They have a lot of love for me, but in two completely different ways. Outside of studying, I enjoyed playing music and exercising in the gym. Everything was very normal until the last month. Every time I step into the gym, it feels cold and gloomy, a feeling I've never had before. At first, I didn't pay too much attention to it, nor did I tell my dad about it. Until recently, a series of scary events that happened caused me unable to ignore it anymore. The first time was when I practiced at 9 p.m. I went into the room and turned on the lights and warmed up thoroughly. I started the workout by jogging, but as soon as I stepped on the treadmill, the light in the room suddenly turned off. Power blackouts in the area where I live are quite rare. Looking into the next room, the electricity was still on. I thought the light bulb was broken. But when I got close to the switch, it was in the off state. I turned my hand on the switch and the light came back on. At that time, I did not have any doubts or feelings of fear. I continued the training session and finished at 11 a.m. The second time was also when I was alone in the gym. It was around 10 p.m. I'm doing shoulder raises using resistance bands. Suddenly, the song I was playing turned off, and a few seconds later, a child's giggling voice froze the blood in my veins. The laughter was so loud and haunting, I shivered and got goosebumps. About 5 seconds later, the laughter disappeared. My music continued playing. I stopped the exercise, went to drink water, wiped my sweat to calm down, wondering whatever just happened was real or I was hallucinating. That day I finished my homework early. I didn't tell my parents about those two strange encounters because they would be so unbelievable. The third time it was not at night, but around 4 p.m. It was the weekend, so I spent time practicing earlier than usual. I improved my exercises with barbells. Lying down to lift weights, I feel like it's much heavier, even though my weight remains the same. After lifting it about 4 times, my mind started to feel dizzy and ringing in my ears. I closed my eyes lightly and then opened them to regain consciousness. When I opened my eyes, I brought the weight down at the same time. From the horizontal bar of the dumbbell, a woman hung, her long hair hanging down, her big eyes wide open, her mouth wide open, filled with blood. In her arms, she held a crying newborn baby. The woman pressed her terrifying face close to mine. Her loud scream and the child's cry hurt my ears. I was startled and screamed loudly, unable to control the strength in my arms. The dumbbell pressed hard on my chest, making it difficult to breathe. At that moment, the woman also disappeared. I braced myself, used all my remaining strength to place the dumbbell on the support bar and sat up, clutching my chest and panting. It took a few minutes to calm down. I was about to get up and go to my room. Accidentally, I looked at my mother's photo on the wooden shelf. Mom looked at me, her unfamiliar brown eyes filled with anger and resentment. I was startled to remember the woman's face just now. She looks a lot like my mother, but it's the mother in the picture. I went into the bathroom and poured cold water down really hard to really wake up. Running to my parents' room, I wanted to tell them about the horrors I had experienced. But just as I approached the door, I heard 2 people arguing.
You are the one who killed my wife and son. You even destroyed your own face just to be here.
I was so shocked. I rooted to the spot, listening to every bitter word my parents said. It turned out that the woman with blue eyes in the picture in my mother's room was my mother's real face. So what about me? What is my true identity?
Some nights I wake up feeling like someone is standing outside my bedroom window, even though I live on the 12th floor, and I don't think it's an illusion because Richard has never been found. I'm Sarah, 28 years old. 2 months ago, I moved from California to Denver to work in the cardiology department of a local hospital. In cardiology, family members are allowed to stay overnight to care for patients, so the atmosphere at night feels less lonely than other departments. The first week went smoothly. I gradually got used to the job, learned how to use the equipment, and memorized the names of my colleagues and patients. Everything was normal until I met Richard. He was the husband of Mrs. Helen, 65, who had just been admitted for a heart attack. Mrs. Helen was in room 314, a double room, but the bed next to her was empty. Richard was much younger than his wife, only about 45, tall, with slightly graying hair at his temples. The first time we met, he greeted me very politely, his voice gentle. "Thank you for taking care of Helen." In the first few days, I was truly touched to see Richard always sitting by his wife's bed. He held Mrs. Helen's hand, spoke softly, and read the newspaper to her. Not everyone is lucky enough to receive such care during illness. After about a week, I started to notice something strange. Every time I entered the room to check on Mrs. Helen's condition, Richard would turn and look at me. At first, I thought it was just a natural reaction from a family member seeing a nurse, but his gaze lingered longer than necessary. His smile started to make me feel uneasy. I tried to ignore that feeling. Maybe I was overtired and overly sensitive, but everything changed completely. That night, it was around 1 a.m. I was leaning over to check Mrs. Helen's heart monitor, focusing on jotting down the readings. Suddenly, I felt someone's breath close to my ear. "You smell so good." I jumped, turning around, the blood pressure monitor in my hand almost dropping to the floor. Richard was standing right behind me, just inches away. Richard took a step back, still smiling. "I was just complimenting your perfume." "But I don't wear perfume when I work. Hospital policy doesn't allow it." I nodded awkwardly, quickly finished my check and left the room. All the way back to my desk, I felt like 1,000 ants were crawling on my back. Richard's friendliness seemed excessive. The next morning, I found a slip of paper on my desk. It was placed right on top of the patient files I was processing. The handwriting was neat. "To my favorite nurse." Below it was a drawing of a flower, each petal detailed, carefully shaded. The artist must have spent a lot of time on this small drawing. I asked my colleagues, but no one knew who left the note. The night security guard also said he didn't see anyone unusual in the work area. For a second, I thought of Richard, but then I put the note in a drawer and decided not to investigate any further. From then on, the feeling of being watched began to haunt me. Once I went to the restroom at the end of the hallway and heard footsteps following me. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, but I swear I heard a faint sigh from the dark corner near the stairs. Every time I passed room 314, I felt like eyes were watching me from inside. Many times I looked back and saw Richard's head peeking out from the doorway, but when our eyes met, he would just smile and turn away. I decided to avoid room 314. I asked Jessica to check on Mrs. Helen for me, giving the excuse that I was handling another emergency. When Jessica returned, she said, "Mr. Richard asked about you. He said you're the best nurse he's ever met." I froze, unable to respond. My next shift, around 2 a.m., the nurse call bell from room 314 started ringing. It wasn't a normal ring. It was continuous, non-stop. Jessica was busy with another patient, so I was forced to go check. When I entered the room, I saw Mrs. Helen sleeping soundly, her breathing steady. Richard sat in the chair next to her, his arm resting on the bed rail. He looked at me with a worried expression. "Could you check Helen again?" I feel like something's not right. I approached the bed, checking thoroughly. The vital signs monitor was completely normal. Everything about her is normal. Are you mistaken? But instead of answering my question, Richard asked, "Are you afraid of working the night shift?" I looked at him with skeptical and uneasy eyes. Was he intentionally pressing the bell to get me to come here? Many things can happen at night. A young girl like you, alone in an empty hospital, he said, his voice slow. Richard's face looked strange. His smile seemed to hide a hungry look. "I have to go check on another patient." I tried to act normal and quickly left. I would definitely talk to someone about getting a different nurse to care for Mrs. Helen, preferably a male nurse. The next day, I had a scheduled day off. When I returned to work, Jessica told me about a man who had come looking for me on my day off. He said he was a family member of a patient who had been discharged and wanted to thank you. When I told him you weren't here, he looked very disappointed. Jessica described the man as middle-aged, tall, with slightly graying hair. Hearing the description, I immediately guessed it was Richard. Richard disappeared that day, and the hospital could not contact him for the next few days. Helen had no relatives to take care of her. I went to the records room to check Helen Miller's information and find contact information for her other relatives. But what made me shiver was that, in the contact information section, Richard's name was not listed. The emergency contact was Helen's daughter, Jennifer, who lived in Portland. I took the phone number from the file and called Jennifer. "Richard?" "I don't know anyone by that name," Jennifer said. "My mom has been a widow for 15 years. She lives alone." Her voice was both confused and angry. I hung up, my hands trembling. Richard had lied to me. He had impersonated Mrs. Helen's husband for a whole week, so what was his real purpose? I called the police immediately. 2 days later, they called back. The result struck me like lightning. His name is Richard Hayes, 47 years old, and he works for the hospital's cleaning company. This job allowed him free access to medical areas and to collect personal information about staff without anyone suspecting. My legs felt like jelly. "We're actively searching for him," the police officer continued. "Would you be able to identify him if we apprehend him?" I agreed. Richard could be anywhere, still watching me from places I couldn't imagine. Jennifer immediately transferred Mrs. Helen to another hospital. The hospital apologized and reimbursed all medical expenses. Jennifer was also understanding and didn't make a big deal out of it. 2 months have passed, but Richard still hasn't been found. I've changed jobs, moved, and even changed my name. I don't know how much longer this haunting will last.
I'm Egan, and my younger brother is Aiden. My younger brother is my only family. The horrifying story happened 20 years ago, when I was 9 years old, and my younger brother was 6. My younger brother and I, like many other children, had a warm family with both parents. But that was just a brief calm before the storm for my younger brother and me. My parents began to have conflicts. It was an issue for adults, so I didn't know the exact cause. We shared a room. When I heard my parents arguing and things being smashed, I held my younger brother tightly. I told Mrs. Ira, our neighbor, about what I had heard and witnessed. She lived alone and was very fond of my younger brother and me. She taught me how to protect myself from the heart-wrenching sounds. My younger brother and I would sit facing each other. I would cover his ears tightly with my hands, and he would do the same for me. My younger brother and I would look at each other, think of happy things, and smile with joy. Mrs. Erica's method was indeed effective, but it seemed to work for my younger brother only, as I could still hear everything very clearly. My younger brother's small hands couldn't block out those heart-wrenching sounds. Many times, I saw my mother with injuries on her face and hands. Every morning when my mother prepared the food, I paid close attention. The injuries increased day by day. My mother was very tired, but never abandoned us. One time, my mother was holding Aiden, but started crying and nearly fell. It seemed like her legs and arms were very painful. I asked many times, but my mother always said she was fine. A few months later, my mother disappeared. My mother left without saying anything and didn't take my younger brother and me with her. My younger brother and I cried a lot because we missed our mother. No one was left to cook us delicious meals and read us stories before bed. Since my mother left, my father became even more irritable, aggressive, and unhappy with everything my younger brother and I did. We were extremely afraid of our father. One night, my younger brother woke up and cried loudly. I was startled awake and tried to comfort him, because if our father heard, my younger brother and I would definitely be in big trouble. "Egan, I want to see Mom. Can we go see her?" My younger brother said this while crying, and I didn't answer. I tried to soothe him so he could go back to sleep. Since our mother left, my father would often take my younger brother and me to Mrs. Erica's house whenever he was away.
My younger brother and I really enjoyed the time spent at Mrs. Erica's house. We loved her attention and the delicious meals she cooked. Even when our father came to pick us up, my younger brother cried and refused to go home. One night, I woke up because I was thirsty. I tried to be as quiet as possible and went downstairs to the kitchen to get some water from the fridge. The kitchen light was on, and someone was standing near the fridge. I approached and saw that it was a woman with blonde hair, just like my mother's. Feelings of joy surged within me. I ran over and called out loudly, "Mom!" The woman was startled and turned towards me. She was a complete stranger. She only had the same hair as my mother. "Are you Egan or Aiden?" she asked me with a rather annoyed tone. My father came over, pulled her closer, and ordered me to go back to the bedroom immediately. Terrified, I forgot all about my thirst and ran quickly back to my room. After I saw that woman in the house, my father started sending my younger brother and me to Mrs. Erica's house more frequently. In the afternoon, when Mrs. Erica and we were sitting on the porch, enjoying the cookies she had just baked, there are noises at night that wake me up. After that, I get scared and cry. I miss Mom. Aiden told Mrs. Erica like that. "Don't be afraid, Aiden. It's just a branch brushing against your window when the wind blows. But there aren't any trees near my window," I quickly explained to Mrs. Erica. "It's in the wardrobe. I know it very well." My younger brother continued to talk nervously. I quickly shoved a piece of cookie into his mouth to stop him. She just smiled and opened her arms to hug my younger brother and me. The sound of a car parking in our driveway meant that Dad was home. We were used to the sound of the car and Dad's schedule. Neither of us wanted to go home at all. "Hello, Mrs. Erica. Did the kids cause any trouble or inconvenience for you?" "No, not at all. They're very well behaved and lovely." While Dad checked in with Mrs. Erica, my younger brother and I hurried back home. I looked inside Dad's car and then ran into the house to look around. Once I was sure that the woman was not there, I led my younger brother into the house. That night, my younger brother woke up and cried loudly, constantly calling for Mom. No matter how much I tried to comfort him, my younger brother continued to cry. My father opened the door to the bedroom and shouted, "Why haven't you gone to sleep yet?" My younger brother, even more frightened, cried louder and continued calling for Mom. "Shut up and go to sleep. I don't want to hear any more noise from you." I held my younger brother tightly and covered his ears. "Dad, let Mom go." My younger brother's words made my father, who was turning to leave, freeze in place. "Dad, you've locked Mom in that wardrobe. Let her go." I quickly covered my younger brother's mouth and whispered into his ear with a trembling voice, "This is our secret. You must not tell Dad." I didn't think much more about it and quickly pulled my younger brother's hand, running away. My father easily caught up with us. I bit his hand with all my strength. Suddenly, a loud gunshot rang out, and the door flew open. I heard the police. They demanded that my father come out immediately. It was Mrs. Erica who, hearing my younger brother's cries and my father's shouting, called the police. My younger brother and I were taken to a children's care center in the city. I remember it was a long time before we were allowed to visit home again. My father was no longer at home, and the atmosphere was very cold and desolate. When Mrs. Erica called, my younger brother and I joyfully ran to her and hugged her. "Mom has been taken out of there by the police, hasn't she?" Mrs. Erica was stunned when she saw me pointing towards a mound of earth in the garden. I witnessed everything because I was also awake that night to get some water. I knew that Mom had gone to heaven, and I always told my younger brother that. I also didn't ask about Dad because I was very afraid of him. When my younger brother turned 10, he became aware of everything. The hardships we endured made my younger brother and me mature beyond our years. Currently, we have a fulfilling life with good jobs. My younger brother and I visited our father and shared with him our upcoming plans. My brother and I will host the wedding together, and Mrs. Erica will witness that happy day.